So hello again. Over the last couple of weeks since we last spoke, I've been thinking a lot about working with others because digital requires us to do that a lot, doesn't it? We have to work with designers, developers, marketers, researchers, copywriters, and countless other stakeholders or people that want their opinions to be heard. And we, in most cases, need their expertise in order to deliver effective websites and digital services. It's not like we can do it all by ourselves, no matter how awesome we think we are. However, balancing these many voices can be challenging, can't it? And challenging is often an understatement. And it can be even tougher to get our own voices heard amongst all that noise. Because each stakeholder approaches a project with their own unique perspective based on the discipline that they represent and, of course, their own personality. So it's unsurprising that it can often lead to conflict, with some voices being drowned out, and when people's voices are not heard, that leaves simmering resentment that can derail a project. You might have either seen that in other people or have experienced that simmering resentment in yourself. Yet the alternative is not particularly attractive either. Organisations that prioritise consensus above all else do so at the risk of reducing progress to a snail's pace and nobody ultimately taking responsibility for the project, and solutions that get watered down to the point that they basically please nobody. So, how can we run collaborative, cross-disciplinary digital projects without them either grinding to a halt or having so many opinions and voices that it leads to conflict where one or two people end up ultimately dominating? Well, I've kind of grown to favour three different techniques over the years. The first is to establish clear ownership. So before I start any project these days, I try and get everyone to agree who is going to make the ultimate decision. I agree on one individual who makes the calls when different voices disagree. And you'll find that actually people are really reluctant to decide on this, but it's absolutely essential that you get them to. You see, the alternative is that some issues are going to be almost impossible to resolve without time-consuming and painful debate that ends up in a compromise everybody hates. You need someone to make the ultimate call if other people can't disagree. The second technique I use is to get everybody to agree on the objectives. I also get them to do this in such a way that those objectives are prioritised. So for example, is it more important to prioritise conversion over a positive brand perception? Or should copy and making sure that it conforms with the style guide come before making a sale? What's your priorities here? Having these priorities establish a pecking order in any opinions that appear. A pecking order that's based not on seniority, but on the type of feedback and the opinions being expressed. And the final technique I use is probably the most important, which is if in doubt, test. And this is the most important of the three because I've learned it's the best way of resolving different perspectives. And that test might be a survey, it might be A/B testing, it might be unfacilitated usability testing, or whatever gets the job done, but crucially in the most lightweight way you can to get the answer fast. Oftentimes with testing, we over-engineer it, and so people don't want to test because it's going to take too long. Instead, seek to find a method that will get you an independent answer as quickly as possible. And that last technique also brings me on to another aspect of working with others that is, although challenging for us to hear, is ultimately true. And that's the fact that just because you are an expert in your field doesn't mean anybody is just going to listen to you if you don't have evidence to support that. Despite all my years of experience and, if I may say so, an impressive portfolio of clients, I've learned that people aren't going to just listen to me unless I can provide some form of independent evidence to support my position. Now, whenever I express an opinion, I end up backing it up in some way, either through some piece of research I've done, some insights from analytics, or if all else fails, the independent opinion of somebody else, some other source to validate my own position. In all honesty, this is often why I get hired myself. You get internal digital experts within organizations that get frustrated that stakeholders are ignoring them, so they turn to me as that independent outside source to validate their opinions. It's terrible that this needs to be done, but it does work. Look, trust me, I know how frustrating it can be to justify every single word you say. You can feel like you're wasting hours gathering evidence that you need. But the alternative is endless argument and debate that's going to take you even longer. Working effectively with others is basically a skill like any other. It takes time to learn, and even after all these years, I still don't get it right, which is why I've been thinking about it a lot recently, because I've made mistakes recently. However, delivering excellent digital services and websites is just impossible if you can't get those relationships right. So my advice is start practicing. Like anything, if you practice, you'll get better. Try things, see what works with people, observe what is working, and then iterate upon it. Ultimately, that will make for much better websites and digital services in the long run.